We're just 13 hours away from one of the most highly anticipated Senate hearings in recent memory. Tomorrow, former FBI Director James Comey will appear before the Senate Intelligence Committee to discuss his private conversations with President Donald Trump. It'll be the first time Mr. Comey has spoken publicly since the president fired him on May 9th. We're already getting a preview about what to expect from Mr. Comey, and Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has the details from the White House tonight. Ed, what do we say?
Well, good evening, guys. A pretty good day for President Trump today because top intel officials testified as sort of a preamble to this on the Hill and suggested that the commander-in-chief did not improperly pressure them to interfere with this Russia probe. And the teaser we're getting of James Comey's testimony tomorrow backs up the commander-in-chief's account that the then FBI director told him several times he was not under investigation. And even when Comey will detail his February Oval Office meeting with the president, where Mr. Trump asked that he let the probe of General Michael Flynn go, Comey and top advisors did not share this with FBI agents. Comey says because, quote, we also concluded that given that it was a one-on-one conversation, there was nothing available to corroborate my account, signaling that even he admits it's a high bar to prove obstruction of justice. But even so, there could be real political damage to this president as Comey testifies about their January dinner, for example. He's going to testify, quote, a few minutes later, the president said, I need loyalty. I expect loyalty. I didn't move, speak, or change my facial expression in any way during the awkward silence that followed. We simply looked at each other in silence. Awkward and a bit dramatic, perhaps, from Comey, which is why advisors for the president are telling me tonight they're bracing for two things tomorrow. Number one, even if it turns out to be a nothing burger, the mainstream media can build up the drama so much to make it look like it was devastating for the president. And the other thing is, even if it turns out to be a relatively good day for the president, he can mess it up by live tweeting the hearing and making matters worse. Guys?
Ed, thanks a lot. You didn't know, but nothing burger is a banned phrase by Gutfeld. We're going to let it slide this time.
I should have assumed that. He's got all kinds of phrases.
I know you can't keep up with him.
Ventilating over here.
All right,
I think I just popped a vessel.
Kimberly,
got
Trump's
taller.
attorney just came out and says the president feels totally vindicated based off of these prepared remarks that Comey is supposed to deliver. Based off these remarks, Trump might not even have to live tweet tomorrow because this is pretty good news for the president for the most part. Do you agree?
Yes, and that's why the attorney came out and made these statements, say the president feels vindicated because what so far that we've been able to review in that prepared statement, which is quite detailed, is that the statements are consistent with what the president said transpired between the two of them. So absent any other witness there, any other recording, there really isn't anything to contradict or provide an inconsistent statement to what the president said occurred in the conversation. And by this way, multiple times, on multiple occasions, he was assured, in fact, that he was not the subject of investigation. So it shows then truthfulness on the part of the president, and I think it diminishes any kind of supposed, motive or intent to say that, oh, he wanted to fire Comey because, he was under investigation by the Russians. So at least in terms of the president, that gives him some cover there and validates his statement. So I think that was important.
Yes, he did come away validated based off of these prepared remarks. Dana, the networks and all the cables have decided they're going to go live tomorrow during
this
testimony.
Including this
Dana, Perina.
Oh, Dana.
Yes,
Well,
I'll be on in the morning.
I walked right into that plug. I didn't even realize it.
Even though you were insulting us at the same time.
Do you think these prepared remarks take the wind out of the sails of some of this intense excitement from some of these left-wing networks?
Yes, I do. And I actually think that that is why Senator Burr, the Republican on the Senate committee, and Director Comey agreed to release it today.
Okay.
Because they don't want it to be, I think that they don't want it to be that dramatic. And I'm not going to say that word that Greg hates because I would like him too much for him to pop another vessel. I do think that the Democrats' high hopes for James Comey are going to be dashed again. He's like Lucy in the football with them. However, I do think that based on the written testimony, I can understand both sides of this. I can understand the president wanting to clear his name, saying that this investigation is a cloud. I want it to be cleared, and couldn't you just publicly say what you're telling me?
Yeah.
I also understand the separation of powers, and I respect them, and I think that the independent judiciary is so important, and I believe that FBI Director Comey was prudent in how he handled it. And I think that's what you'll see tomorrow, is that a public servant caught up in a situation where you have that Hillary Clinton doing the terrible thing of having her private email server, then running for president, him having to get in the middle of that, making, I think, a mistake to comment on that and not recommend a prosecution, then getting himself into this situation because what he says in the written testimony is that he wanted to avoid a duty to correct if, in fact, it changed that he became a subject of an investigation, which could be worse for the president in the long run. So I think that the director was being prudent. I don't think it's necessary for the White House to trash Comey's reputation, and I think that they should go tomorrow, have a great infrastructure event, and just forget about it. Let the lawyer's statement stand, and let your surrogates handle it.
Greg, speaking of forget about it, there's a moment, according to James Comey's recollection, where the President of the United States sat across from him and demanded loyalty. Is that how people in New York talk? Is that kind of par for the course? Because Chris Christie came out and said that's how bosses around town in the city frame things. Are you buying that or not?
Kind of. I think what we learned is that Trump is guilty of being Trump.
Yeah.
Every time something comes up that's supposed to be egregious, you find out that maybe he was inappropriate or blunt, but unlawful? No. So this is not earth-shattering. Although I really thank Comey for releasing this helpful study guide beforehand.
Yeah.
It's like now we can be prepared for this exam. It's like a program you get for a local musical.
Like a take-home test.
But the biggest loser here is CNN.
Yeah.
For predicting, according to sources, Comey was going to testify that he never said Trump wasn't under investigation.
I think we have it right there.
Oh, really? Darn it.
Fake news.
So they weren't just wrong once. They're wrong 3 times because he testified 3 times. So that raises the question.
3 strikes, you're out.
Who was CNN's source? I think it was Kathy Griffin because she was there just hanging around. By the way, the problem with Trump being Trump is that part of it is his responsibility. But every time I was hired for a job, there was always an employee orientation day where they kind of tell you the rules. But apparently, the rule number 1, don't meet alone with the FBI. Number 2, don't demand loyalty. You did that in real estate. You did that in Queens. But you can't do it here. But the thing is, this is the mark of somebody who's not a politician, and this is what happens. Just want to add another note about this Comey memo. It's like a Golden Corral buffet. There's something for everyone. So if you don't like Trump, you could bring up the demanding loyalty thing. You could also bring up lots of other stuff that's in there.
I'm sure Juan will bring it up momentarily.
And then if you like Trump, you can say that Comey vindicated him on that last part and that he didn't interfere. So it's like you can look at it, and it's amazing when you look at how other people in the media are going, oh, my God, impeachment. And then everybody else is like going, nah.
There's nothing there. There's no legal basis.
Don't say what it is.
Okay.
It's a nothing taco.
Nothing taco.
I'm not interested in a nothing taco, as you know.
I don't know.
We're going to leave that one
I want
alone.
to eat a real taco.
Oh, okay.
Juan, Jonathan Turley, who's well-respected legal eagle, said that although some of these comments by President Trump were maybe not mature, there was nothing criminal about them. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing criminal as of yet. I mean, the closest we could come, Jesse, is the idea that there is a basis for saying that he was trying to interfere with an ongoing investigation by asking the FBI director, can you see your way to let this go, that Mike Flynn is a good guy? But the question then becomes one of intent, and for people like Turley, that is the measuring stick. And can you prove that the president had intent to block or interfere with an ongoing federal investigation?
That's a very high bar.
It's a very high bar, and as he said, and I think Kimberly said this, that given that there is no independent corroboration, or maybe Ed Henry said, how are you going to prove that? I will say this, it's very interesting to me that we had a story out indicating that President Trump was asked by Attorney General Sessions, do you want my resignation? And the reason for this apparently is that President Trump was upset with his decision to recuse himself from the Russia probe. And then we have also the news that FBI Director Mueller went to the Attorney General and said, you know what, I'm uncomfortable being with this president. I feel like he's trying to...
Being alone.
Yes, being
in
alone.
order to preserve the independence of the judiciary is what he was hoping for.
And it preserved the independence and integrity of the investigation. So this would indicate that he did feel to some extent that this guy was after something. He says, in fact, in one of the conversations, that the president told him, I'm trying to lift this cloud, which I've told that's the New York business term, right? I'm trying to lift this cloud. Can you help me, right? We'll talk about in the next segment more conversations with intelligence community officials. But today they got in trouble because they won't even say.
They wouldn't say it in public session.
Right, and they said they'd say it in private session because they don't want to say these things in front of a worldwide audience, and that makes perfect sense.
In New York, lifting a cloud is smoking a joint.
Really?
Yeah.
How would you know, Greg?
Yeah,
I watched it.
self-appointed expert. But I think what's important here is that there isn't any time that Comey thought that the president was trying to get him to stop an investigation.
Right.
Was in any way colluding, was in any way obstructing justice. So you don't have that there. So how are you going to prove that? You're going to just imagine it because the person who was in the room that was the subject of that discussion and that conversation is telling you that it wasn't problematic, that it didn't rise to the level because straight shooter Comey, if it was, then he would have had to report it and actually make it the subject of an investigation and say that this is something that was improper. So he goes as the farthest that he goes is saying that it was very concerning. That was it. But never did he feel that this was something that he had to do or was compelled, to do. And when you hear President Trump talking about, expecting, that's who he is. Anybody who knows him. Loyalty is a big thing to him.
Right.
That's his deal. That's the way he rolls. That's his thing. Comey also gave you a further insight, which backs up what Greg says, which is, this is a man, I think, that didn't quite understand what was appropriate to discuss with the FBI director.
I agree.
But that does not show any kind of, specific intent to commit a crime or do anything. He's saying, I don't think that this is a president or a man that actually quite kind of knew the ropes as to how we do things around here.
But I would just add,
Can I just say something? So he's been the CEO of a private company for a long time. I just don't think that necessarily excuses not understanding basic rules of the road when it comes to government and separation of powers. When you work for the government and when you're the head of the government, you pledge your loyalty to the United States of America, not to any one man. And that is just a fundamental principle of America. That's not something that you have to learn during the transition. That's just something that the founding fathers put that in the Constitution for a reason.
But I wouldn't, I gotta say, I don't think I would know that. If I ran for, honestly, if I ran for president, I would be treating it just like everything else I did. If I thought that somebody was like, after me, I go, dude, why are you doing this? Can you, lighten up? I think that's how New Yorkers talk to New Yorkers.
If President Obama had done that,
boy, you would be
and the excuse is, well, he's new to the Senate.
Yeah,
believe me, they did use that excuse.
But I also think President Obama assumed that Eric Holder had his back.
Right.
Wait, Sessions is a long-time leading supporter, early supporter of President Trump. But I think, just to pick up on what Dana was saying, I think what we're seeing here is a president who feels very isolated, nobody he can trust. He can't trust Jeff Sessions? Wow. And the second thing is he just doesn't have, I think everybody at the table said this tonight, he doesn't have a sense of how you have a responsibility bigger than loyalty when you're the president of the United States.
I think he's very loyal to the country, and I think that's why people put him in office.
And he has a core group that he trusts, I think, that's around him.
That's right.
It's Jared.